The anime starts with a woman holding a baby in the rain. She leaves him at the door of a strange place and says that she prays for him to be strong when he discovers his destiny, calling him the child of her hopes. The scene cuts to a train station. Metro with our protagonist going up the stairs of the station. A lady drops the contents of her suitcase and he offers to help. After gathering his clothes that have fallen, he tries to pick up the lady's suitcase, saying that he would help her by taking the suitcase upstairs, and at this time, the granddaughter of this lady appears there, kicking the protagonist in the face, thinking he was a thief. The scene cuts with her apologizing for having made a mistake and introducing herself. Her name is Junko and she reveals that she is a student at the Academy of Magic. By the protagonist's uniform she assumes that he also studies there and asks what his class is. He replies that he didn't know yet because he was a transfer student and introduces himself. Akuto is his name. They take the floating train and leave for the academy. On the way she asks him if he wants to work for the government because the students there have guaranteed jobs in the imperial capital, but he says he wants to help people by becoming the high priest, which apparently is a more important position because she is impressed with his ambition. She says that it takes a lot of determination to become one, but Akuto says he's prepared. She also says that he comes from a family of protectors of the empire and the two decide to be friends. To seal this friendship they use a tradition of her family involving his sword, and if either of them betrayed the other they would die by the sword. They arrive at the school and she presents it to him. The two separate and he goes to the infirmary. There a doctor and teacher named Mitsuko receives him and takes them to a room full of transfer students just like him. She puts them to go through a kind of magic bird that said their health condition and what their future profession would be, like the Harry Potter sorting hat that says what it will be the person's house. It's the same idea here. This bird tells a student that his profession will be a soldier, another student a doctor, and so on. When Akuto's turn comes he thought his destined profession would be high priest, but when he takes the test the bird reveals that he would be the demon king, the greatest threat to society. Everyone there despairs and the teacher asks everyone to return to their classrooms. The anime reveals that 100 years ago the war left the world plunged in chaos and a certain person used the weapon of demons to try to destroy the world. That person was the self-proclaimed demon king. He is taken by his teacher Mitsuko to the room and on the way she says that thanks to his future profession many people will try to kill him. That is, the guy already started at school scared shitless. They arrive in his classroom and he realizes that it was class A, the same class as Junko, who looks at him with an ugly face when she sees him. The class shits in fear when the teacher introduces him, showing that the rumor had already spread. He tries to make a speech to make a good impression, but it makes everything worse. He sits down and the teacher decides to put Junko as class representative just like in the previous year, but according to a student named Hiroshi they should choose someone else and he names Akuto. But he, in an attempt to appear cool, refuses this offer and says that Junk should take the vacancy anyway, saying that she would fit better in a task of cleaning or something, but once again it backfires because the school's cleaning service means killing people or destroying things to protect the school's secrets or something. The whole class is even more afraid of him, and the Junk gets up pissed at him, saying he was embarrassing her and calling him to a duel. He takes her from behind, in a good way huh boy, and tries to calm her down, telling her to trust him, but it's no use. She tries to get it right him, but he holds his blow. Out of nowhere currents of power start to spread through his arm and the teacher, sensing that this is going to go bad, makes a magic barrier around them, telling everyone to duck. This duel destroys the classroom. Whole class. After things calm down he meets this boy from before called Hiroshi who claims to be his servant and admires him. Akuto asks where the girls' dormitory was and he thinks that Akuto wanted to do something wrong there. But no, he just wanted to apologize to Junko anyway. He knocks on her window at night 3 times and she opens the window, pissed at him again, asking if he didn't get tired of embarrassing her, and goes after him trying to kill him again. He stops at a forest and a strange girl with red hair simply thinks he is a prince who crossed the forest to find her and tries to protect him from her. Before receiving a deadly attack from Junk he throws a ball of energy at her that causes a hole huge in the forest. As if things weren't crazy enough already, a girl named Korone appears there claiming to be an observer. The scene cuts to a girl with red hair crying and a boy who looks a lot like Akuto giving her a bird amulet and leaving. In the forest, this girl named Korona heals Junko with a strange pistol and she runs away. He tries to follow her but she stops him, saying that a god gave orders for her to observe him and says that she would like to discuss the incident with him in the presence of the director. Out of nowhere the girl with red hair disappears, leaving her lingerie behind. Akuto takes them, and she, who was invisible, leaves in shame. Detail that she has the same bird amulet as the girl in the beginning. Her name is Kina, and in the director's office this observer, who is an android, says that he had no intention of hurt Junko. After they leave, Akuto explains to his teacher how the incidents he caused were. After explaining everything she hands him the student manual that allows students to communicate with each other by telepathy. After a tiring day he goes to sleep and the next day on the way to school the student council president Fujiko appears there saying that it feels better to meet him in person, could hardly believe that he would be a demon king in the future. Also says that if he needed anything just call her, and he, delighted, says that she is the first person who understands him since he arrived at school. Later he calls her using telepathy and says that he wanted to make peace with Junko, but if he went there in person it would cause another misunderstanding. So she asks him to meet her in the mountains, but he says that Korone would hardly leave his foot because it was made to observe him, but Fujiki replies that there is a way to deactivate the androids by pulling their tails. He then goes to the mountains along with Kuron and looks for a way to see her tail on the way, but takes a beating from Kina who was invisible, and when he falls he finally sees her tail but doesn't have the opportunity to pull. Walking a little more, monster appears, a very angry giant dog. She says that this dog turned into a monster after a lot of contact with mana or something, I don't remember, and knowing that Akuto jumps on it and uses his magic to remove all the mana from that dog, making him return to normal. Korone says that no mage has done this before and would report it later. The dog then finds Kina hiding in the bush and she comes out of her invisible mode but returns shortly after seeing Akuto and runs away. Korona says that apparently she can't leave everything invisible like the clothes she wears and bends down to open a suitcase with her clothes. At that moment her tail is exposed and Akuto takes the opportunity to pull and deactivate it. Fujiko appears and invites him to be part of the disciplinary committee to keep the students in line and not let them do anything wrong. He accepts, and before leaving she gives him magic pills and a gun. If he throws one pill at him and another at Junk then she could understand his feelings and tell him to use this as a plan B. He calls Korone again pulling her tail and once again they see Kina running away from the dog. Akuto says he has seen that jewel before and remembers that he gave it for a girl in the past, wondering if that was Kina. She hugs him in fear of the dog and after a few things asks to be his friend. The scene cuts to Fujiko calling Junko. She tells her that Akuto wanted to talk to she in particular and asked her to talk to Junko for him. She asks why he would do that and Fujiko lies, saying he threatened her and stuff like that. She's very angry, so she says she was going to see him. Fujiko, opening a secret passage in her room, says that everything went well and that she could observe everything from there without having to do anything, and a strange voice asks what she was planning. She replies that it won't be long before the future Demon King becomes her slave and calls that voice that it was a head in a brother bottle. A flashback shows Fujiko's past with her playing with her brother. The scene cuts to her asking her mother about her brother, and her mother says he wasn't there. She finds out her brother died and her mother says he failed on her mission and that she would take her place as the heir of the family. She then says that she would be strong, and after the opening we see her as an adult discussing Akuto with her brother. He says that she has become very bad already. She says that Akuto's powers match the ideals of dark magicians and that he would be the person who would destroy the world in the future. The scene cuts to him taking a bath with Hiroshi. Yes, two men taking a bath together. Details that they were in the female bathroom. KKK. He praises Akuto for seducing and even humiliating the public leader of the school, that is Junko, and Akuto doesn't understand what he means by public leader. He explains that the school has a secret side with students who do part of a group that uses black magic for evil purposes. Akuto imagines that in addition to the public leader there is also a leader of this dark side, but Hiroshi says he doesn't know and leaves the women's bathroom naked as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Later Fujiko calls him and says that he managed to convince Junk to meet him. He thanks him and soon after goes to the student council, who accept his position as a member of the disciplinary committee, saying that it matched his future as a demon king already, that he would have to fight with a lot of people already in class. He discusses whether he would have to pull Korone's tail to meet Junko, and that's exactly what he does later when he was in the room alone with her. Arriving in a kind of bizarre basement where the two should meet, he gets hit in the head from the back and falls hard. A group piles up on top of him saying he was no big deal, but he gets up, understands how to control his magic and uses. She tries to torture them slowly. They try to attack him but he defends the attacks, and after defeating everyone, he takes the leader of the group and almost kills him but stops when he sees Junk on his side. She accuses him of trying to kill them, thinking that it was for nothing, but he explains that he was just defending himself. Obviously she doesn't believe that, and having no other choice he takes the gun to use the pill to understand feelings, but when he pulls the trigger nothing happens. He then sees that the gun was empty and Junk Junko runs away saying that she would come back with more people to defeat him. The scene cuts to Fujiko, who was watching the fight and thinks it's strange that the pill is gone, and reveals that that pill actually made anyone swear loyalty to her. He explains to Korone, who hung up on her and went to see Junko alone, and she says he should take responsibility for it. He said he will, and that's why he went to see his teacher, who decided to punish him. This punishment happens with the school, announcing it to General that he tried to take over the school to dominate the world, and calling Junko along with all the supporters to hunt him down. The key point is that the punishment would last for 1 hour. Hiroshi appears there to help him, but he says that only he should run away for 1 hour. The punishment begins and he tries to run away but is soon surrounded and is left with no way out. He and Junko have a quick conversation, but soon she tries to give him the final blow but is prevented by Kina, who appears there saying that Akuto actually is a nice guy and that Junko actually likes him, and that even though they fight they are great friends. That's enough to make the people who were there with her imagine that she was working with him and if back against her. She is then forced to go over to his side in the battle, but before things get ugly, Korone shoots a bazooka from afar towards the fight that explodes rice everywhere, because according to Kina, rice is the only something that can unite everyone. Really, rice is too good, but if you put raisins on it, it spoils. There's a fight in the family. The scene cuts with Akuto in the room and Kina explaining that she mixed the pill he received from Fujiko in the rice because she thought that the pill helped people understand each other, and after Korone's analysis she says that this is a type of black magic that induces people to swear allegiance to someone. And the scene cuts showing General in Fujiko's room huddled together on top of her, i.e. it backfired. The scene cuts with Fujiko's brother talking to a strange guy and saying that he only helped him because he thought he was going to destroy a certain someone, but what he really wanted was to possess it. Who the hell? The scene cuts to a magic class at school. Akuto decides to partner up with Junko and she accepts. The students had to pass a ball of magic to each other and she explains that that was an exercise to control her mana. She throws the ball to him, but when he throws it back it causes a huge explosion that once again leaves Junko all injured. Later the teacher says she was fine and says for him to practice in a mental discipline chamber to control his power. In his room, he wonders why she asks him to take a waterproof backpack, and the scene cuts with Fujiko planning to do something to him since she would have to stay there for 12 hours. Her brother says that she has become very mean, and at that moment she gets angry with him, saying that it is all his fault. He enters the chamber and when he looks back he sees that Korone entered with him. Not only she but Kina, who came invisible to give him food but didn't know the door was going to close. Fujiko appears there with a gun about to shoot a magic bullet at the building, which according to her would mess with Akuto's mind that was meditating and he would swear loyalty to her. Little did she know that he was with one retard and an android bothering him. They find a treasure map hidden inside the wall, and after taking a look Akuto decides to meditate but is prevented by the Kina wanting to piss. She keeps knocking on the door and Fujiko opens it thinking it was Akuto, but Kina comes out and goes straight to the bush. She sees the treasure map on the ground and makes a face of surprise when she picks it up and takes a look at the content. She leaves saying she would keep the map, and the scene cuts showing Junko receiving a call from someone unknown wanting to meet her at the usual place. After that we see Fujiko asking her brother if he wrote that map because it was his handwriting, but he says he didn't remember. At school, she sees that the map was all over the school. She thinks it was Akuto who did it, but when she confronts him about it she sees Kina pasting the map on the wall outside the school. The scene cuts to the classroom. Out of nowhere several injured students appear there and say they were attacked by monsters. The chairman of the disciplinary committee says that Akuto should announce it to the whole school, the ban on finding this treasure, because many attacks on students had happened. In an audience at the school, he gives this message saying that whoever disobeyed would receive adequate punishment, but with something that Hiroshi says all the students think that this was all a setup. He tries to explain that no, but a girl comes down from the audience giving a kick that almost misses him. They fight a little and she tells him to prove that he has no involvement by going to look for the treasure himself. The president of the board tells him to go, but not really trying to look for it, just making it seem real, and when he leaves he finds it strange thinking that she has something to hide from him. Fujiko gives him an enchanted weapon to help him on the journey, and finally they begin the journey, arriving in a kind of crypt or dungeon. But you will only know what happens next in part 2 of this video. Leave a like and comment so I can see that you want to take a while.